Hi, I'm Gordon, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a delicious overnight cold brew coffee with just a simple Aeropress. Now before going any further, it's important to note that a cold brew is very different from an iced coffee. Now an iced coffee is where you simply make a hot coffee as normal, perhaps using an Aeropress or an espresso machine, and you simply pour it over ice and you make a delicious cold drink. But a cold brew is something very, very different. As its name suggests, the brewing actually takes place with cold water, or in some cases actually cold milk. That's produced a really nice drink when I've had those in the past as well. But not only is it a cold process rather than a hot one, but it takes much, much longer. We're talking hours, not minutes here. It's typically an overnight process, with some people taking 12 to 24 hours. Now most specialty coffee shops will offer cold brews in the hot summer months, and I've seen it prepared in many different ways with lots of different equipment, from very fancy looking chemistry lab type sets that wouldn't be out of place in Breaking Bad, to something as simple as a bucket with an old t-shirt as a filter. But in this video, I'm on holiday, so my equipment is very much limited to what you see in front of you here. Now, when I go traveling, I normally take with me an Aeropress Go. This is the miniature version of the standard Aeropress. I really like this piece of equipment. You lift the lid up here. This is where I keep some spare paper filters. And you end up with something that looks like a normal Aeropress, but in shrunken form. And that goes as far as to the scoop and the stirrer. They all fit inside. What makes it particularly neat though is the actual carrying device itself works as a cup, which means you don't need to find a cup that will actually fit a standard Aeropress to push down on. You've actually got one with you all of the time. And I actually transport this inside a metal camping cup so I can serve coffee to 2 people at the same time. My second piece of equipment that I take traveling is a Paulex mini hand grinder. Now I bought one of these when I first got an Aeropress several years ago, and this was the go-to grinder at the time because it was designed to actually slide inside the chamber of a full-size Aeropress, not the mini Go version that you have here. Now it has been superseded in quality by quite a few different options now, but I still travel with it because it is so light compared to a lot of my other hand grinders. And since it's my oldest one, I don't really mind too much if anything happens to it. Unlike the Comandante, there's no way that that is going traveling with me in a backpack. So that's all the coffee equipment that I take with me when I'm traveling, just a simple Aeropress Go and a small hand grinder, which means all I need to make decent coffee are some decent beans. And I've got some here from a cafe in Oaxaca, Mexico, called Turno, which I can highly recommend. I've got a separate review of that cafe if you're interested. To make a brew, all I need is some hot water. Well, the water's quite easy to get a hold of. Most hostels and hotels have got a big container that you can pour some out of into a bottle. But the problem that I have in most of the places that I stay in South, Central and North America is actually turning that cold water into boiling water, because most of the rooms that I stay in don't have a kettle, and I'm not always lucky enough to have any cooking facilities that you can see behind me. Here there's a gas hob. I could make some boiling water, but most of the places I stay at don't have that. And that's when the idea of making a cold brew came to me during this actual trip that I'm on right now. Because while I don't have any complex chemistry lab type device or a bucket with a t-shirt that I can filter through, I do have an immersion device here. I've got a chamber that I can brew coffee in, which has got a filter to filter out those coffee grounds when I'm ready. So here's my very simple recipe, and you'll be relieved to hear that there is no scales, no weighing, not even any timing involved. It is a very casual coffee. Okay, so the first step is to simply grind as much coffee as you need, and I'm going to stick with the standard Aeropress recipe of 1 scoop per drink or per person. I'm going to be brewing for 2 people, so I'm going to grind 2 scoops of coffee. Let's go. This is easier to do when standing up. I don't actually mind hand grinding, you know. I actually do this at home. I don't have an electric or a powered grinder. I think making you wait a little bit of time for something that you're really looking forward to makes you look forward to it a little bit more. And you can actually feel the different grind of different roasts and different beans too. Some of them are harder to grind than others. And it doesn't take that long. I find it only takes about 45 to 60 seconds to grind each scoop. So I've got to do that twice for this process. The other added bonus of making a cold brew is that you prepare it the night before or even the whole day before, which means you don't wake up anyone in the morning with your incessant hand grinding. I've actually had my family really comment on that and go, oh, it's really nice, you're making your coffee in the morning, I can't hear you anymore. So that is the first one ground. That didn't take very long at all. So I'm going to prepare the Aeropress now. Now the Aeropress, of course, does have a filter that goes in the bottom here. And the standard way of using it would be to attach the chamber here, position it above whatever you're using to squeeze it into later on, pour in your drink, hold it with a vacuum, and then if it was an overnight cold brew, you would then leave it like this. But I'm not entirely convinced that when I came to this in the morning, it wouldn't have all dripped out. I think it might be okay. I'd love to hear if you've tried this in the comments, but instead I've opted to do it using the inverted method. So you start with the chamber here and you insert the plunger a little bit, I'd say just under 1 centimetre. Make sure that it is fairly even, and you're going to be brewing it this way up. Now, so long as this seal holds, none of that liquid is going to drip through. So I'm fairly confident that this coffee is going to steep for the entire time that I leave it, until you get that slightly more unnerving process in the morning where you need to turn it upside down and plunge it. But we don't need to worry about that. That's at least 12 hours away. So let's prepare this drink. Now that said, I'm also not convinced that some of the liquid isn't going to drip through this seal here and end up making a mess on the floor of my room. So as a precautionary measure, I'm going to take the inverted Aeropress and I'm going to actually position it inside the cup that comes with the Aeropress Go, so that if any of it does come out, it's just going to be saved inside here. You do have to be careful that you don't knock this over in the night though, so do put it somewhere out of the way. Obviously, if you've just got a standard Aeropress, you can put it inside a cup or a dish or anything else, just something to catch that liquid if it comes out. So let's now put in that first bit of ground coffee. Now, in terms of the grinds, if you look up recipes for cold brews, you'll hear a lot of people who recommend using a coarser ground for a cold brew. However, you know, for this one, I've already done it with my standard grind size and it's absolutely fine. So I would just stick with what you've got for your normal Aeropress hot brews. And if you don't like it, if it's coming out too bitter or not bitter enough, then just adjust your grind size as one of your variables. But for me, it's absolutely fine. So it's time to grind that second scoop's worth. Now, one of the other benefits of preparing this the night before is that it's all done in the morning. So again, not only are you not disturbing anybody in your room or around you with your grinding in the morning, there's also very little to do to actually prepare your drink at the end. Once you've plunged it through the filter, you've got a concentrate that you just pour into a cup, add a bit of water, and you're good to go. So it's really, really fast. And that is actually also very tempting for just a normal workday morning when you're back at home. It's a drink that you can prepare very, very quickly and just leave in the fridge. And look at that, that did not take very long. I hear a lot of people who go, I can't believe you hand grind at home all of the time, not just when I'm traveling, but at home. But why not? It doesn't take very long at all. And if you get something like a Comandante C40, you're going to get an extremely good quality grind at a fraction of the price of an electric grinder of the same standard. Right, so in goes my second scoop of coffee. And what you'll realise right now is about half of this chamber is full of coffee grounds, which is pretty full. It's not ideal. It's going to have a very small amount of liquid added to it. This will work much better in a full-size Aeropress. Of course, it is something you could do in a French press very, very successfully, and that will give you a lot more liquid to play with. But again, I'm doing it in the Aeropress Go because I came up with this while I was traveling, and this is all I've got. So let's grab some water. Pour it in the top of the chamber. Not quite all the way to the top because you do need a bit of stirring room. And this is the very neat stirrer that comes with the Aeropress Go. I love this. So we'll give that a stir. Okay, It's already smelling really good, I have to say. And now I've got my filter holder with a paper filter in. You may notice that isn't pure white. That's because this is a filter that I have used before, just once before. I generally wash my filters and use them 2 or 3 times. Generally enough to make the coffees that I want to make in one day, and then I get rid of it and I start a new filter the next day. It's because I just hate throwing away so many of these things, and it means that there's less to carry around with you too. So you pop the filter on here. And if you've not made an inverted Aeropress before, this is one of the slightly hairy moments, because if you twist it too vigorously, there is a chance that you're going to knock this over and you're going to end up with liquid and coffee grounds everywhere. And I'm sure if you've already experienced that, it's quite a mess. So I'm going to hold the chamber carefully and I'm just going to twist this. There, that's twisted closed now. And I always have a look around it to make sure it isn't too much of a leaning tower of Aeropress. And if it looks all right, I'd say that is now good to leave. Some people pop them in a fridge. Of course, in this situation, I don't have access to a fridge. I'd say that there is one actually behind me, but that's a shared one. I'm not going to leave this in the shared fridge. And besides, it works fine as a room temperature brew. Put it somewhere in your room that someone is not going to knock into it, and then revisit it the next morning. Right now, you can just forget all about it, leave it, and enjoy the rest of your evening, safe in the knowledge that your coffee is already brewing, working hard to make a delicious drink for you the next day. Oh, morning everyone. Well, it's the following day, and my cold brew has been steeping inside here now for about 15 or 16 hours, and it is time for the most alarming part of the process with any inverted Aeropress method, which is turning it back the right way up before you do the plunge. It's always a little bit scary. You hope that it doesn't fall out, especially when you're feeling a bit vulnerable in the morning, but fingers crossed. So you lift it up, turn it round, and position it on the cup that you're going to be squeezing it into, which in this case is the cup that comes with the Aeropress Go. So far, things are looking good, and none of it leaked overnight, which is good, so I'm going to stand up to plunge it. Okay, so that's the coffee plunged on what was a bit of a wobbly table, but we're done. Now, it didn't take that much of a plunge because, of course, this was already half full of coffee grounds. So what I've ended up with in the bottom in my cup here is a small amount of concentrated cold brew elixir. This beautiful liquid. Now, like most concentrates, I'm going to be watering this down. Unfortunately, in the test that I've done so far, I can't water it down too much without losing a lot of the flavour, so it's still going to be quite a short drink. You're not going to be making that much concentrate given a chamber of this size, but if you've got an original Aeropress or a French press or a larger chamber, you can of course make more of this. As I mentioned yesterday, I've got enough coffee in here to make 2 drinks, so I'm going to split this evenly between the original and the camping cup, which I keep with me. And I mentioned that this all fits inside here. It's all very, very neat. That goes inside my backpack, and the metal cup protects it all nicely. So let's split that 50-50. Yeah, that's about right. And then I'm going to just top it up with some water to taste, and I found that I can just sort of roughly double the quantity of liquid here. So let's try that. Like most cold brews, all of those sharper coffee notes like the acidity or even some strong bitterness have all been completely mellowed out during that overnight cold brew process. And what you're left with is a really mellow, rounded, soft drink. It's completely different to how these beans taste when you brew them hot. So just in that respect, it's worth doing just as an experiment. But if you were to then pour this over ice, you've got a really, really nice drink, especially in a hot environment like this. But even at room temperature, with the water that I've got here and the lack of any ice cubes, it's still a really, really delicious drink. And it's absolutely transformed the way that I can make coffee when I'm traveling in locations where I can't get hold of boiling water. Now, you could, of course, take a travel kettle away with you. I've got 3 models, one for the UK, one for Europe, and one for the US. That one working on US voltages. And it's a really nice compact kettle. They really don't make them much smaller than that, but it does take up a lot of space in a backpack. Fine if you've got a case, but I travel with just 1 bag. I don't want to check in any bags at all. So I just simply do not have room to carry a kettle around with me, or even like a camping stove or anything like that. So I am reliant on finding hot water wherever I'm staying. But this cold brew technique has really allowed me to make coffee without any hot water. Anyway, I hope this has inspired you to try out making a cold brew yourself at home, especially if you've only got some pretty basic equipment like me. I'd love to hear if you've tried it with an Aeropress, a French press, or if you've got a dedicated brewer, or even if you just enjoy ordering them at cafes. Which are your favorite cold brews? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and if you're interested in checking out any of my cafe reviews, please do have a look at those on the channel. Right, that means it's time to finish my drink. Cheers.